Yo, welcome everyone to the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel and another episode of the Rock Fantasy Files. We're here tonight as we set the time machine to 2002 and we travel over to Sweden and to talk about two Swedish melodic death metal albums with a roundtable discussion on both. Tonight we visit the fourth studio album by Viking metal, melodic metal band Amon Amarth, with Versus the World. It was released on November 18th in 2002. Amon Amarth formed in 1992 in Tumba, Sweden, going up against the sixth studio album by Dark Tranquility with The Damage Done that was released on July 22nd in 2002, making this their 20th anniversary year. Dark Tranquility actually formed in 1989 and one of the bands that kind of responsible with the Gothenburg metal scene over there. So I've asked our guests tonight. We got Myles from Myles of Metal in the room. We got Ryan Gavalier from Vinyl Destination. We got Count Ralphus down here from our local heavy metal buff and rock historian. I got John and Jazzy Cavaluzzi from North Carolina, the father-son team. And we've got one of my good customers here at my brick and mortar store in Middletown, New York, Andrew Gabriel. You can probably catch at the store almost every day, rummaging through the CDs and records and stuff. So we're going to ask each of my guests to pick three songs or pick what they like about the albums at least, and maybe something they don't like about each album, and give it a rating. And at the end of the show tonight, we will have them say, well, hey, you've only got enough money for one of these albums when you go to the record shop or you go on go on iTunes, whatever you do with your music, and which one are you going to pick if you're going to pick one. So welcome to everyone to the show, and I'm going to kick this off with Ralph tonight, and let's talk about, we'll do it in alphabetical order. Let's talk about Amon Amarth first, and we'll loop around and we'll do Dark Tranquility, and we'll figure out which one we would pick the winner out of the two tonight. Thanks everyone for joining the channel.
All right, thanks for having me again. Yeah, I love Amon Amarth. Everything they've done is great. They're such a consistent band all these years. Songs on this album even remind me of the newest album. Like they're very similar still. You know, they haven't really changed that aggressive melodic death metal style that both of these bands have, and it's a good comparison. For my number three, I'm going to go with Where the Silent Gods Stand Guard. I got the double disc version where it's got the whole live album on CD. They got the live in Germany where they do the entire album. And then Death and Fire is my number two, the opening track of this album. And Down the Slopes of Death is my number one song on this album.
Cool.
And I give this rating a 9. Great album. I love everything about it. Not one bad song.
How many times have you caught Amon Amarth live, Ralph? I got a question for you.
Yeah, believe it or not, I've only seen him once.
Wow. Where was that?
It was at the Chance, I believe. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I got to see him the last time down in New York City at the Hammerstein. It was Arch Enemy, Amon Amarth, At the Gates, and I forget the first band that opened up anyhow, but they were off the Joms Viking album.
They were looking for Deicide, I believe, when I seen him. It's so long ago.
Really? So that's a long time ago with Deicide. Wow, I was not there for that. I probably wasn't into him yet there that early. Cool. And what kind of a rating will you get the album?
I give it a 9.
A 9 out of 10. All right. So we're going to skip over to North Carolina, and we got John and Johnny Cavaluzzi. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us, man.
Okay.
So I know I love this band, and I know he's a huge Amon Amarth fan, probably even bigger than I am. I think they're a fantastic band. They don't really put out anything that's not very good. I mean, everything they do is really good. I would probably say number 3 for me would be Down the Slopes of Death. Number 2 would be the title Versus the World. And number 1, I like that tune Bloodshed. I think it's great. I don't know. It's just a great album, start to finish. they always kind of go with the mid-tempo thing. That seems to be recurrent on almost every album, but everything is like a war chant. It's really great. It could be a soundtrack for, any one of those Viking shows on television.
Oh yeah,
It's a great album. Anyway, and I give it a 9. I love it.
cool. And what about your son?
For 3 is Death in the Fire. For 2 is Down the Slopes of Death. And number 1 is Bloodshed. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I absolutely love this album.
Cool. And I was an error when I said that I saw them last in New York City. The last time I saw them was they were part of the Slayer farewell tour. And it was Slayer, Lamb of God, Amon Amarth, and Cannibal Corpse. And that was down in Camden, New Jersey at the amphitheater there. That was an amazing show with a great lineup of bands. And it was great to see Amon Amarth out on. I actually saw Amon Amarth also with Megadeth in an arena a few years ago. So they've done some of the arena tours here in the States. And they were really gaining a lot of momentum in the States before the pandemic hit. It's one of the stronger touring bands here.
One thing I want to throw out there, Steve, first time I ever heard him was in Rock Fantasy. You were playing him.
Okay.
So I had to ask you who the band was, and you told me. I was like, I got to check them out. And that was probably 22 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, time flies when we're having fun, right? Cool. All right, so we're gonna move back over to welcome Andrew. We haven't been over there yet, so hey, sorry about that. Andrew Gabriel is here, and he'll unmute and tell us his perspective of the Amon Amarth record.
Well, first thing I want to say about Amon Amarth is that they were actually originally called Scum back in 1988. And they changed the name due to another melodic death metal band from Finland, actually, also called Scum. And this one is probably my favorite by them, this album. The first thing I want to say about this album is that the drumming is incredible.
Yeah.
Used to like a rolling kind of mid-tempo beat to it, like on stuff like Death and Fire. And my top 3 favorite tracks from this album are Death and Fire, Where Silent Gods Stand Guard, and my number 1 pick for this album is For the Stab Wounds in Her Back, mainly because of that thrash break in the beginning, that so fucking heavy.
Yeah, for sure. And what's your rating on this one?
My rating for this, that a 9.
A 9.
I'd say.
Cool. Well, I thank you, Andrew. And I'm gonna head on up to we're going to Ohio and talk to Ryan Gavalier next. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Stephen. So yeah, I'll be honest, both of these albums are pretty new to me. I've heard both of these bands before, but I am not like extremely familiar with them. But I really like this album a lot. It's super, super heavy, humongous guitar sound. It's like larger than life when you play this album loud. The growls on it are absolutely brutal. The drumming is amazing. The overall production sounds fantastic. And the whole album is just like extremely heavy. It's nonstop heaviness, and it's just absolutely brutal. I love it. And my top 3 tracks are number 3, And the World Will Cease to Be. Number 2, Where Silent Gods Stand Guard. And number 1 will be Bloodshed.
Wow.
And I'm going to give this album a 9 out of 10.
Nice. So when I asked you last week, I didn't think you were too familiar with the bands, but I like that some people have just listening to this for the first time. It's almost like you're getting a reaction video out of you, like, and now you're probably going to be a fan and reach out because they have quite the catalog to go through.
Oh, definitely. I absolutely plan on listening to a lot more by them. I was really impressed.
For sure. And then we got Myles left here, and then I'll wrap up and we'll spin around with Dark Tranquility.
Yeah, so Amon Amarth, I love Amon Amarth. Anything to do with Vikings and stuff like that, I love it. And this is a little bit of change of pace for Amon Amarth because their previous albums, they were a lot faster. They were all about speed and just, ripping through the albums, which I do love. I love, One Cent from the Golden Hall. This is their first album, which is,
Yeah.
it's got more black metal elements found on this album. But this album slows down the tempo to about a mid pace, and it focuses really on the heavy, catchy guitar riffs. If you're looking for catchy guitar riffs, you're going to find it in spades on this album. Damn near every song on here has a riff that you like. If you're into like heavy riffing, you're going to love all these songs on here. And I've seen a couple people comment on the drumming. Frederick Anderson's drumming on here is freaking phenomenal. His double bass blast on here, even with the mid tempos, is still at a fast pace, and it slams through the whole record. And with slowing down the tempo of this record, I say slowing down, it's not slow. It's still a very, very, mid tempo pace, but it gives the guitars a lot more room to sound a little bit more pronounced. You can tell that the guitars are a lot more catchy and a lot more riffy on this record. And it's just a killer record for me. It's one of the tops from them. 3 songs that I love off this record is the title track, Versus the World. It's freaking an awesome song. It's Versus the World, it's just killer. Number 2, Down the Slopes of Death. Awesome guitar riffs on here. The guitars rip through this whole song. And I tied it with Bloodshed just because I like Bloodshed so much and I couldn't leave it out. But my number 1 favorite song off of here is Death and Fire. That's one of my favorite Amon Amarth songs.
Yes. And
personally, to me, it's one of the best heavy metal songs I think I've ever heard. When it comes on, it's just like when that song comes on and it don't make you want to run through a wall, I don't know what to say. It's just so fucking killer. I'm gonna give this album a 9 out of 10. It's a freaking banger album. I love Amon Amarth, and this is definitely one of the better. Well, I say better, but Amon Amarth does not have any bad albums in my opinion. So yeah, it's definitely one of the ones that are up there.
Awesome. And yeah, like I said, going into this tonight, I picked this episode out because I've been trying to do this episode for a couple months now, just trying to move the dates around and get the right people to talk about it. Because, a lot of people on the channel were just pure into the more pure death metal, or we've been doing a lot of classic rock, and a lot of people weren't too familiar with these 2 albums. And I really wanted to honor both of them and talk about them. And Amon Amarth, I mean, I've seen them a bunch of times. Earliest, I believe, was down at Irving Plaza. And I remember them. I think they played with Children of Bodom. And it was a memorable night because I was at the bar and I look over and Jack Owens is there and Glenn Benton from Deicide were there because there was a Roadrunner anniversary party the next night in the city. And Deicide were in town thinking they were going to actually play there. And they ended up doing, I think Glenn played, but it wasn't with full Deicide. But we were all hanging out at the bar, make a long story short. And yeah, and it caught in the moment at Irving Plaza, and drinks are flowing. I end up with a couple Jack and Cokes or something mixed drink, and I don't remember exactly what it was. And Johan comes walking over, I think they opened up the show. It was later in the night, and he had his horn with him. And I'm like, hey man, it was great to meet you. And I got a photo with him, and I'm like, hey, you want a drink? There were drinks that were poured for someone else, and everybody was kind of clearing out of the bar, and he took them and he poured them right into the horn, and he started drinking them right there. So that was a good moment of remembering him. Also at Irving Plaza later on, I'm not remember the exact tour. It was Behemoth was playing, and I think Goat Whore were there. It was a great metal night, and I go up into the VIP area because I'm friends with Brian Lima, of course, from Metal Blade Records that signed Amon Amarth in the US. And I'm caught in the moment, got a pretty good buzz going. And I stand and I look up. Now, you kind of you're up there and you're watching the band, you look at your surroundings, and next to me is Johan again, and he has an Iron Maiden, the Trooper shirt on, and it was kind of cool that I was hanging out with Johan again. He seemed like a really cool guy. I got to meet them also when they were on tour with Megadeth. I actually went to the venue with Chris Caffery, and he was helping out with Metal Church. Metal Church was one of the opening bands. It was Megadeth, Amon Amarth, Suicidal Tendencies, Butcher Babies, and Metal Church. And actually, we were hanging out backstage with Amon Amarth and Dave Mustaine. It was a good night. And Ice-T was actually hanging out with us too that night. That was a fun evening. So my 3 songs from this album would be no particular order, but for the stab wounds in my back, I love Versus the World, the title track, and Death and Fire, which is still one of the highlights of their live set when they come around and you get to see them, experience them live. And I'm giving this album in that genre, this is a 10 out of 10 for me. And now we will kick it back around and we'll visit another one of my favorite bands who I've seen a bunch of times, with Michael Stahn and the Dark Tranquility camp. And I guess we'll kick it off with Ralph and keep it in the same order. Ralph, welcome back.
I forgot to show off this little figurine that I bought at Rock Fantasy a few years back.
Oh yeah. Well, they were famous for box sets. Did you get the box set with the bobbleheads in?
No, I didn't even see that.
You remember that? I have those bobbleheads.
Huh.
I forget which album. Yeah, our viewers could add if they're a fan of the band and remember. I have it in my house still, and it came in a nice box, and it was all of them in bobblehead form.
That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, like you were saying about how it's like new, some of these albums are new to people. Well, this Dark Tranquility, I just recently got it because I knew we were doing this episode.
Yeah.
And it's got a few bonus tracks and stuff, but I had seen Dark Tranquility once back in 2003 at the Chance. They were on tour with the Berserker, Napalm Death, Strapping Young Lad, and Nile.
Wow.
And I remember when I seen them, I was like, this band doesn't belong on this bill because they didn't fit in, especially with the Berserker was 1,000,000 miles an hour, and same thing with Napalm Death and even Nile and stuff and Strapping Young Lad. They just didn't seem to fit on there, so I didn't end up going out and buying anything by them.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for their image much. Even now, like when I watched some of the videos recently, the image doesn't match the music. But as I was listening to this, the more I listened to it, I think the production's amazing. I love the guy's vocals. Our work is unbelievable. I think this has a better production than the Amon Amarth. Even though the Amon Amarth has a great production, this album is so clear sounding. I really like the production on it. And the more I listen to it, the more I'm a fan of this aggressive melodic death metal. My number 3 is going to be the title track, Damage Done. Number 2, Final Resistance, the album opener. And number 1, the Treason Wall. And on this particular CD version, it has the Treason Wall comes on again at the end, and it's a live version, and the crowd singing along with it. I prefer that live version that they do on this. I thought it was really good. I give this a 7. And of course, if I'm at Rock Fantasy and I can only pick one, I'm going with Amon Amarth.
Excellent. And since I've seen them a million times, it seems like the Treason Wall is one of the highlights of their set when they pull that one out, along with Final Resistance. Final Resistance is such a great, strong track also. And all right, so cool. We got a vote for. Is that from the shirt is that from the tour, or is that something you got from me?
No, I found this at Salvation Army. It's from a 2010 tour. It was only $3 and I bought it, but I've never.
I had a bunch of those in the store from that tour. It might have ended up. They've toured with a lot of people in the States. That tour I didn't see. the one you mentioned, for some reason, I was into them though. I don't know why I wasn't at that show. Because I got into them around 2000, maybe kind of a little bit later than I would have liked to, but I kind of discovered them around 2000, 2001. I can remember them like warming up Kill Switch Engage the one year, and I'm like, I'm not doing that one. I'm not getting involved with that. But I've seen them a million times. In fact, a couple of years ago, Nick Franco, guys are familiar here with from Hudson Valley Squares, the Sea of Tranquility. Me and him went up to Albany at the Upstate Music Hall, and it was the final night of their tour. It was Amorphous, Dark Tranquility, Moonspell, and I believe Swallow the Sun were all on that tour. And we had such a great time. A couple times seeing them up at Upstate Music Hall. We saw them the night of the 2020 election also. We were there, and there was like 5 European metal bands on a Tuesday night in November, and there was more band members than there were fans. But it was a memorable night both times, seeing Dark Tranquility upstate and meeting, hanging out with Michael and those guys. Gave them some Rock Fantasy shirts and whatnot. So anyhow, enough of me rambling on here. So John and Johnny, welcome back.
All right, thanks a lot. I like this album. I don't love it. I actually like the one that came out right before it a little bit more. But I do like it a lot. For what they do, I think they're really good at it. That's for sure. I don't know. The keyboard thing for me is always just a little, certain bands use it real well, and then other bands don't do it nearly as well. These guys do a real good job with it, and they incorporate it perfectly, I'd say. But I like the one before it a little bit. It seemed like as they kind of progressed, and just what happens with bands, I think they just get better at their instruments and they want to experiment more, and that's just a natural progression. So they really showed it on this. It's a solid album though. For myself, I like it. I would say my third favorite would be Final Resistance. My second one would be the title track, Damage Done. And my favorite one is the Monochromatic Stains, just because that video is so cool. I just loved it. I remember when it came out, that's what turned me on about the band. And when I went back, I did like Projector a little bit more, but I don't know. They're a solid band. I'd give it a 6 or a 7. Let's go with a 7.
No.
And if I had to pick one, I'd go with Amon Amarth. It just seems it's just heavier. Right? It's just a heavier record. But I like everything about the Dark Tranquility. They're good.
Right. I think that they've aged quite well, and I love the album Atoma. That from 2 albums back. I just think that's amazing. But of course, I'm partial. I love them a lot. So go ahead. Well, Johnny, what's happening?
My top 3 are pretty much very similar as him, but it's Final Resistance, Damage Done, and The Enemy. I'm not a big Dark Tranquility guy. This is my favorite album by them. I'll give it a 6.
All right.
And I would definitely rather have the Amon Amarth album.
All right. So Amon Amarth is getting the heavies going here. For some reason, I lost the next guy we were going to. Andrew disappeared. Andrew, where are you? Well, anyhow, hopefully he comes back. Maybe he's having some internet issues. So we'll move over to Ryan.
All right. Yes, this is another album I was not super familiar with before doing this episode, if familiar at all. I dug it. I think that not quite as much as Amon Amarth, honestly. I think that both are really good albums. I like that they have a bit more ambience to their sound with like the keyboards and stuff. And I thought that a lot of the vocal performances were really fantastic on here too. Some good riffs also. I like the production more on the Amon Amarth album. I think it had better guitar sound and just instruments overall. I don't really love the sound of the keyboards on here, even though I like the playing. I don't know, for some reason, the production of them doesn't really mesh with the guitars as well for me. but my top 3 tracks are 3 Final Resistance, 2 Damage Done, and number 1 The Treason Wall.
Cool.
It's an 8 out of 10 album for me. I really like it a lot. But like I said, if I was gonna pick one, it's gonna be Amon Amarth. It was
All right.
heavier. I like the production more, and I overall like the songs more. Some of these songs lost my interest a little bit, whereas the Amon Amarth album, I'm hooked in the entire time.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right, Andrew. So Ryan, which one are you taking home?
Amon Amarth.
All right, cool. Andrew, yeah, you disappeared for a second, but we got you one out of order, but here you are back, and let's hear what your take is on the Dark Tranquility Damage Done, please. Is he froze up?
So,
There he
Dark Tranquility is overall my favorite. Let me start over.
right.
So, my favorite Swedish melodic death metal band is Dark Tranquility. Overall, like, yes, better than Amon Amarth. I wouldn't say that they're better than At the Gates. Well, at least At the Gates early stuff, I would consider that mellow death.
Mm.
But in terms of like being an overall like mellow death band, like from beginning to end, they are the most consistent, most unique, most well-composed band out there. And this album, proves that so much. The leads on here are just so memorable and just so like silking with so much like character and energy. It's a very energetic album, but it's also a very melancholic album, which gives it such a very, unique sense of, again, character to it. I'm sorry if I'm not very good with my synonyms, but I just don't know what else to say about this album other than it's great.
Mm.
One thing I should say about Dark Tranquility, or a fun fact about them, is that before they were Dark Tranquility, they were called Septic Boiler, which is a weird name.
Yeah.
But then they changed it to Dark Tranquility, and they're the band that we all know today. And Damage Done so much, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. That's right, I'm giving this above Amon Amarth, which is going to be a surprise to some people. This is probably my second favorite melodic death metal album of 2002, which the first one we're going to have to find out someday.
All
I
right.
don't want to spoil it now, but my top 3 tracks on here are number 3, White Noise, Black Silence. Number 2, Kodeth Ray Sunshine. And number 1, Monochronic Stains. Just the guitar work on 3 are just like top tier.
Yeah. You're breaking up a little
For
bit.
this genre in general.
So what album are you picking if you got to pick one, Andrew? I think we
Probably
might.
because I'm like, obviously Dark Tranquility.
You're going with Dark Tranquility? Good. Yeah, we're having a bad connection. You are there. Dark Tranquility?
Yep.
All right, cool. So we got to vote for Dark Tranquility. And yeah, you're having a little problem with the internet maybe or something. This Zoom tonight's been wacky all over. I apologize for the viewers because we've had to restart this thing twice. And I don't know if it's the Zoom tonight or something going on with a storm. It's not storming here, but anyhow, back over to Myles and we'll see what you've got to say.
Yeah, so Damage is done. I remember Dark Tranquility from back in the day. Like when I was first, like a little young metalhead back in the early 2000s. I remember, a lot of people really like Dark Tranquility, and I really do enjoy their music. And Damage Done is probably the one that I'm most familiar with from them.
Okay.
It's a staple in mellow death. It's one of the ones that a lot of people recommend to if you want to get into mellow death metal. A lot of people recommend this album, And there's some catchy riffs on here throughout the album. The riffs are just infectious on a lot of the songs. The keyboards, I will say this. I used to like them more back in the day. Back when I first heard this record, I liked the keyboards a lot. It's been a while since I heard this record. And I don't find it takes me out of the music, but maybe just my taste, I went a little bit more heavy, from back where I used to be. And, the keyboards for me, I like them, but, just throws me off a little bit, not much. I think the vocals are awesome on this record. They're fucking killer. The vocals are real aggressive on here. Michael's Stan's vocals on here are aggressive, but they're not overdone to where it feels out of place in this type of music, because compared to Amon Amarth, the Amon Amarth record, it's not as heavy. But the three songs that I like off of here are Format C. I really enjoy that song. White Noise, Black Silence is an awesome song. And my favorite song by Dark Tranquility, since from back in the day, is Monochromatic Stains. It's an awesome song. It's like when I think about Dark Tranquility, that's the first song that comes to mind when I think about them. I used to enjoy this album a lot more back in the day, but honestly, I don't know what it was. Maybe this week while I was listening to these records, I was just in a Amon Amarth or a heavy mood, because I was going back and forth between these records, and the Amon Amarth record, I was just finding myself putting on more. So I'm going to give this album a 7 out of 10. It's a good album. It's still a very, very strong album, but I'm definitely going with Amon Amarth on this one. And if Death and Fire comes on, I'm definitely running through a wall, because that song fucking slays.
Very cool. Very cool. And thank you for your input. And hey, Amon Amarth is winning this battle tonight, but I just wanted to touch on both these bands because I love them both. And my notes on Dark Tranquility, me and Ralph are the same on this one, actually. I'm going to go with the 3. Damage Done, the title track. The Treason Wall, and Final Resistance is probably my favorite track. And the monochromatic, I can't say it tonight. That's how dull I am. The monochromatic strains. I screwed this up. If Michael or Dark Tranquility is watching, or any fans, apologize. But I love this album. It's one of my favorite bands. I go to this album a lot. It's not my favorite album by Dark Tranquility, but it's one of their stronger ones. I've been listening to all their stuff all the way through the catalog. I usually go to see them every time they come into the States. And I'm going to give this album a 10 out of a 10. And if you've given me one record, sorry, I'm on Amarth. I'm going with Dark Tranquility with this one. I mean, they're two different, they're both melodic death metal, but the Amon Amarth is definitely heavier. And I think the song titles and the whole Viking genre, more bloodshed and stuff like this, where the Dark Tranquility, Andrew put it really good. It's just a grand scheme of things with Dark Tranquility. And I just love just about everything they've done. And they touch my heart and love them. And so Amon Amarth has got the win tonight, but hey, me and Andrew hung with Dark Tranquility and gave him a couple votes. And I hope everyone loved the episode. It's been a little rough. We had some technical difficulties tonight, but we'll be back next week. And if you like what we do with the channel, and please mention the viewers what album you like better, and Amon Amarth or Dark Tranquility, in the messages and the message. And please hit like and hit subscribe, and we'll be back next week. We've got a bunch of shows set up for the month of June. We're going to be talking about classic rock. We got some classic metal going on and a little bit more. So welcome everyone back to the channel next week, and see you soon.